the outcome was more than just the medals, the personal best times. The outcome was more than that. It was how to achieve it that I realized was just as important. And yeah, and as I say, it's allowed me to actually enjoy my sport a lot more and given me that deep perspective. And I can take that actually not just into swimming, but into life out with swimming. Because at some point, I am going to have to hang up my goggles and, you're not going to get gold medals for getting around the supermarket the fastest. I'm going to have to find different ways to kind of get that self-gratification. And for me, I realized that, those processes, goal setting, finding your purpose, they all actually are important for me for life after sport as well.
Hello everyone, I'm Michael Corrigan and this is the Journey Continues podcast, where we speak to interesting individuals about how they've navigated the challenges in their lives. Our mission is not to provide advice, but it is 100% to provide insight into what our guests were thinking and feeling through these times so that you can cherry pick the information that resonates with you the most. Today's guest is Hannah Miley, a competitive swimmer who has represented Great Britain at 3 Olympic Games, as well as being the Commonwealth champion in 2010 and 2014. Today, we're going to explore Hannah's journey and how she's overcome some of the challenges she's faced along the way. Hannah, welcome, and thank you for being on the podcast.
And thank you very much for inviting me.
No, I'm really excited for this one. This will be good, a good conversation. So a good way to end the week on a Friday. Excited for it. Cool. So do you maybe want to start off with how it all started and what your story is?
Yeah, so I basically splash around for a living. It's a very unusual sport. Swimming is something that you see, once every 4 years at the Olympic Games. But for me, it started from a very young age. Dad threw me in the pool when I was about 3, taught me how to swim. And just as I was growing up, I just felt more comfortable being in water. It just felt like that was my sort of extra bubble. I could live in my own head. I was a very imaginative child, had great vivid imagery and creativity, and it always seemed to come about when I was in the pool. And I used to think I was a mermaid, used to think I was flying. So, those sorts of bits kind of kept my sort of imagination pretty much in check. I have incredibly floppy feet, so I would give it 100%. I'm very, very competitive when I was younger. I'd always try and, even schoolwork, like I had to finish my schoolwork first, or I had to get the best score. Like just the competitive side in me was just inbuilt from such a young age. And I did other activities as well, tried to do, a bit of running, tried to do team sports like netball, and having incredibly floppy ankles, great for swimming, not so good for land-based sports. I can trip over on a flat floor. Like I'm just not that coordinated. And just as I got older, I just felt swimming just felt more like home for me. I just love the fact that it was different to everybody else. And for me, if everyone goes right, I always went left. Whether that's just being awkward or stubborn, I just felt I had that need to be different. And swimming created that difference because there weren't that many kids in my sort of year that took swimming as their hobby. They learned how to swim. I loved it when we got to have swimming as part of our PE sport in our class. And, I guess I was a little bit of a show off when I was younger because I always tried to find ways of making it effortless. But it wasn't until I was maybe 2000 and I was 10 years old and I was watching the Sydney Olympics for the first time. And, I enjoyed watching swimming, but for me, I loved doing swimming. For me, I loved being in the water rather than watching it. Mm. But my dad was heavily involved in swimming from when I was really, really small. And he'd worked with a couple of Olympic athletes who actually went on to win Olympic gold medals. And there was this one particular swimmer called Misty Hyman. And it was one of the most incredible races I'd watched at the Olympics. And for me, the first thing that stood out was she was behind the block with this massive grin on her face, just loving every minute. Everybody else was just so focused and in the zone. But her living in the moment was something that really kind of captured my attention. And then she pulls out this swim that's, caused one of the biggest upsets, I think, in Olympic history. She beat the home crowd favorite, an Australian girl called Susie O'Neill. And just her underwater work, like she looked like what I would imagine a mermaid would be in the water, just the amount of time and the effortlessness of it. It was just so spectacular. So for me, she became my idol, and not just because she won an Olympic gold medal, but just who she was as a person. Because I thought, you know what, she's worked so hard, and to know that you've worked so hard to get to the point where all you've got left to do is to just enjoy the moment, I thought that's a pretty cool place to be in. So yeah, so from there, I kind of took my swimming to the next level, tried to still stay competitive. And I was always pretty small. I'm quite petite for a swimmer, only 5'5", and I get towered over by a lot of athletes. And for me, that just makes me fight harder. I love being the underdog and kind of being, I guess, the little Jack Russell up against the big German Shepherds. I just keep going and going. And if everybody feels, oh, I'm going to have to give up on this, I'm the last person to kind of give up on it, because I just keep biting after it. It's taken me to 3 Olympic Games, 4 Commonwealth Games. I've been able to travel the world with my sport, and it's certainly been a massive opportunity. And if I hadn't have decided to focus in on it, I don't know whether I would have been able to go on this incredible journey. And through sport, it's been great. Being on the podium is amazing, but there's so many life lessons that sports taught me, whether it's different cultural differences when you go to different countries, and taking on board that. And it certainly opened up a lot of doors and opened my eyes to quite a few things. So yeah, and at the age of 31 just now, we're in a completely different position with the pandemic. So obviously travel's not been possible, and training as well has been really, really challenging. But for me, I see that as just another chapter in my story to hopefully move on and learn from.
That's incredible. That's a really incredible story that you've just told. A lot of stuff to unpack there.
Yeah.
So if we focus on the pandemic for a little bit, because when we talked about this previously, when we spoke, it really hit me, and as to how much of a challenge it's been. And when I speak to people, there's always a moment where, it's the virus was something that was happening in a far, far away land, and all of a sudden it was on our doorstep, and a lot of things happen really quickly. So there's this very, people share this everyone remembers where they were when they knew it was a thing and it was really happening. When did the penny drop for you? What was that like?
It was kind of a build-up. So I was racing in Northern Ireland in February, and ironically, I actually had a chest infection. So whether I actually had COVID or not, I don't know. But it was quite bad. I had it in January, and I just couldn't shift it. And then not racing in Northern Ireland, and there was talks about it, and a couple of people were coughing, and my coach, my dad, and the sort of sports physiotherapist that we had was kind of joking, going, oh, have they got COVID? But it didn't really kind of twig that this was going to be a massive issue. It just felt like, this in December, January time, you talk about the flu and the common colds, and you just try and avoid people who are ill. So it just felt like it was one of those sort of bugs or illnesses going around that you just think, all right, just avoid people that are coughing. Then I was racing again in March, and I ended up with actually a really bad shoulder. So I actually couldn't finish the competition in March. But little did I know that was the last time I was going to be in a swimming pool, because then all of a sudden it was, you can't train. So it did pretty much happen very quickly in that sense. But I was aware that it was building up, just lots of talks of people saying, I think it was, we heard Swim Ireland had shut down a lot of training centres and everything was going into lockdown. And we were thinking, is that going to come over to us? We're not sure. It's been talked about, but nothing seemed to kind of be building up to this big thing. And then, a couple of days after not, pulling out that competition, it was like, yep, you're not getting back in the pool. And there was no indicators to, how long it was going to be for, what the process was for, just sit tight for a couple of weeks, or is it a couple of days? You're very much in the dark with it all. So it was pretty sudden, but at the same time, you were aware of the build up for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how is that then? I mean, the Olympic cycle is obviously something that everyone's very aware of. It's, I imagine things are pretty much set in stone, years in advance. How has this affected that?
Massively. I mean, it's the Olympic year. It's like out of all the years for this to happen, it was one of the biggest ones because you work off a 4 year cycle. So you build up your training for 3 years, and then the year leading into the Olympics, all you've got left to do is to just fine tune things, work on your psychology, because you've got that foundation of work. And the hardest part was knowing that each day I spent out the water, I was watching that block of work, that huge foundation that I spent so long working on, just being chipped away and getting less and less. And mentally, that was really, really hard because
Yeah.
there was nothing I could do about it.
Yeah.
No amount of time just lying in the bath, that was probably the only way I could replicate swimming. And you watch guys who are doing like athletics, and they could kind of go outside and do some form of running. You could kind of go out on a bike for cyclists, but for swimming, like, we have our main field of sport we have no access to. I did try and go into open water swimming, and I had the gear and no idea, trying to swim in the North Sea in March. Yeah, safe
Would
to
be
say,
cold.
it was very cold. It was 4 degrees, and I got the water line up to here, practice the acclimatization, and yeah, it was a bit chilly. But I thought I got the hang of it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get into it. If I can do just a couple of laps of this cove, it'd be great. And I just got to the water line just below my chin, and I thought, I can't stick my head under. It's really cold. I've got brain freeze already. My head's not even under the water. And I thought, I can't do this. I really can't do this. So, I got out of the water, and I felt good for being in the water. And it was really difficult to then take my wetsuit off because my hands were numb. Like, I was just, trying to do like your jacket button up when you're in the cold. It's really hard. It was no different to that. Um, and yeah, and I was just trying in my head to find all the different ways possible to hold on to that foundation of work that I worked on. So, and we live off routine as an athlete. You know what time you're waking up, when you're training, how long for, when you eat, when you rest, when you sleep. Like, there's so many bits that are just exactly planned out because you have to have that predictability, because you need to plan it, you need to know it. And it just threw everything out the water. And I had in my head that, coming into the Olympic Games, this was going to be my last year in swimming. I was looking at retirement. So I was thinking, from September 2020, I was going to look at, life after sport. So that, yeah. And then when we weren't sure whether the Olympics were going to go ahead or not, it was okay. If it is going to go ahead, how's the team going to get picked? Am I going to be fit enough? My event being 400 meters, which is about 4.5 minutes long, is considered middle distance to distance. So I need that foundation of work. I'm not a sprinter. My race is definitely not a short race. So I didn't know, I know it takes that long time to build up that sort of endurance and that aerobic capacity and aerobic base. So yeah, it was just a huge mind jumble, kind of that sort of first 6 weeks. And then once the Olympics were cancelled and postponed, you kind of left with going, okay, so can I hang on for another year? Am I financially able to hang on for another year? Can I get the training in to stay on for another year? And and it wasn't just me that impacted that decision, was my partner as well, my long suffering fiance, who's been involved in my swimming career for quite a fair few years. So, I had to kind of deal with that. Can I hang on for another year? But I'm a creature of habit. I love my routine. I love knowing what's happening. And it just literally just turned everything 180. I had to become flexible. I had to become pretty free fluid, no pun intended, with my movements. And actually really try and adapt my sort of whole mentality and try and stop being so rigid with my thinking. So yeah, it's been tough, but coming, a year later on the other side of it, I've certainly learned an awful lot, and it's definitely made me a lot more resilient individual, as I'm sure it's made a lot of people a lot more resilient, if we sit back and really think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a lesson in resilience for us all, I think. You mentioned, so there's a couple of things there. So what is obviously the Olympics are still in the calendar for July of this year?
At the moment, yeah, we've not heard anything different. So
Right, okay. And then how does that work with the qualifiers coming up as well?
So we have our qualifying meet in April. The 14th of April is when we start racing. So originally it was April last year that we were going to have, a 6-day competition, and I think they've reduced it to 4 or 5 days now. So we still have to go down to London to compete, qualifying time, and then come in the top 2 as well. So there's a couple of bits of criteria to try and qualify. There are opportunities to qualify also in May and in June, but the main bulk of the team will be picked in April. So at the minute, the plans are still to go ahead as if the games are still confirmed to be going ahead.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so training at the minute has been very, very disrupted, and whether I can qualify or not is very much up in the air, but I kind of have the mindset now as well. I'd like to give myself the opportunity to. And on top of, all that's happened with the pandemic, I also had shoulder surgery in October. So it's certainly been a tough year as an athlete, I guess. There's people out there that I'm very aware of who had more, definitely a lot more tough sort of situation than what I've been in. But yeah, it's yeah, I'm getting through it.
So we talked a little bit about routine. I think everyone's a creature of habit, and I think, from a one of the really obvious business examples that I can think of with Trtl is everyone was used to work in the office. There would be a certain pattern to when people would speak and have meetings and just go about their day. And then all of a sudden, everyone was working from home. They then transitioned to using Zoom and all the other things. And I think the whole world is Zoom fatigued at some level right now, and actually really craving in-person meetings.
Yeah.
Some people really adapted incredibly well to working from home. Some people just didn't. I think I'm probably somewhere in between. But it was almost like when you almost had to learn how to walk again, in a sense, because there was a pattern of doing things, and that pattern was completely disrupted. It was very difficult to plan because the situation was changing, every week, to be honest. Like, something else would come out and you would have to adapt to it. I'm sure people thought in March of last year when it started that, okay, we're back in the office in the summer, and now here we are a year later. So yeah, I guess to touch on you becoming a bit more flexible and a bit more, I guess, like less routine led, and more, I guess, more just, in a sense, taking it as it comes. How did you go about doing that? And I guess, how did you manage your emotions through that? How did you manage just in moods as well? That would be interesting to know.
Yeah. I definitely went through several phases, and even still to this day, I don't know whether I've got it right. I think that's the one thing I always felt I had to get things right. And being in a routine, it's like,
I don't think anyone has though. I don't think anyone knows. Like, I think we're all just doing our best.
Yes, very much so. And I've kind of learned to, as long as I'm fine, that's the main thing,
Yeah.
And the first 3 weeks, like, I felt my motivation levels were like up here, because I thought, okay, well, we're going to hear the next announcement in 3 weeks' time once lockdown has started. Let's try and find ways to keep ourselves fit. So working on land-based programs, so using Zoom, and we tried to find a way with my team to have the same time each morning to get up to do the workouts. Some people were saying, oh, could we not do it in the afternoon? And I'm one of these people where if I was given the choice of training in the morning or training in the afternoon, I'd rather train in the morning, because then I know I've got the rest of the day. Whereas I know there's some people that be like, oh no, I'd rather have a lie-in the morning and then train in the afternoon. But I think the vote kind of got to the point where it's like, no, I think 9 a.m., each morning we're going to do like an hour-long Zoom session, just different types of workouts. To start with, it was our coach that was prescribing it. And then eventually we kind of took it upon ourselves to, do like a timetable. So each swimmer got to make their own workout. So it felt like we had a bit of an input. But after, 3 weeks, you could tell motivation levels were starting to wane a little bit. And for me, especially after 3 weeks, when you found out lockdowns extended even more, I just plummeted into this really kind of dark place. It was just frustrating. There was no sight as to the end of it. And I actually kind of found that my dog became my sort of like savior in that sense of routine, because I'm used to my alarm going off at 4:30 in the morning, 2.5 hours of training in the pool, food, and then training another 2.5 hours in the afternoon with a possible 1 hour, 2 hour gym session in the middle. So I'm pretty busy all the time. And then to suddenly just stop and not do anything. A couple of days you feel it's great, nice to rest up, but then you just lose that sense of purpose, because I felt, I am a swimmer. I don't have swimming. So what am I? I can't be a swimmer without being able to swim. And doing the land training, you could definitely tell we're fish out of water. We're just trying our best to sort of do the exercises without, falling flat on my face, tripping over my floppy ankles, or, doing any other sort of serious harm. But Poppy was the best thing ever, because, I had to get to bed at a reasonable hour, because she was always awake at 7 o'clock in the morning, wanting to be let out of the toilet. She was still quite a young puppy last year. She's now a year and a half. So, we were still very much in the puppy stages. March last year, and then she had to be fed at a set time, and then it was like, right, okay, well, now that we're up, I've done my workout, let's go for a walk. And that in itself, she created a little routine for both my partner and I, so it gave us some structure. And I kind of found that routine isn't necessarily I need to do these things throughout the day. It's a sense of structure, a sense of finding that purpose, so that once you finish the day, that, okay, I've used that time effectively. Because that's one thing I didn't realize actually lockdown's given us. It was time. I always felt, I don't have time to do that, don't have time to do this. And actually now it was like, I've actually got too much time. I don't know how to fill it. So we kind of found, the best thing to go from being highly structured and routine is to actually just create a little bit more of a structure, so that each day, I wasn't sleeping in until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Poppy definitely wouldn't let me do that. It just wouldn't be fair for her. But at the same time, I've definitely felt my well-being just feels a little bit better for that, because you can still eat and drink at the same, it's amazing how if you eat at the wrong times or leave it till later, how, it can impact your sleep. You don't eat dinner until like 9 o'clock at night, you're going to struggle to get to bed. And then if you struggle to get to bed, you're going to be tired when you wake up in the morning, or sleep in later. So I noted it had a big knock-on effect. So I had to kind of create my own little structure and routine, to keep me motivated in a sense, but also realize that it's okay if it doesn't stick to it, as long as I feel like I can achieve something at the end of each day. That gave me that sense of purpose to keep my motivation levels up, even when it dropped, because that was hard. That was very hard.
Yeah, it's interesting. So there's a couple of things there. So quick question. So you mentioned at the start, and you mentioned there as well, where you said your motivation dropped after maybe 3 weeks. Is that because you didn't have anything to aim for, in a sense? Because it was always changing?
Very much so. It was that target, that goal. And then I realized actually how important it is sometimes to set goals. It doesn't have to be one massive goal. It can be a series of micro goals. And that's where I found that sense of purpose actually came in really handy. Was, okay, so today, what are the things that I want to achieve by the end of the day? And just a little and often actually really helped give me that sort of target, something to aim for. And that's helped pull my motivation levels back up. Because there was other things as well that was happening. Like, we had a lot of health scares and issues with my family and my partner's family as well. And the worst part was just feeling useless, not being able to actually physically go and help. All you had to do was just sit and hear what happened, and then be like, I can't do anything to help. And that was the worst part, because normally you would just go, right, let's drop everything and go and help with the family situation, support the family, support the individual who's suffering, and you just couldn't do that. And I'm a type of person that likes to help people. For me, I really enjoy doing that. And to not be able to do that was it was awful, because I felt like, I hope my family feel like I am thinking about them, and I want to go and help, but I can't. And yeah, that really played a lot on my mind, and just made me feel very frustrated, very upset. And emotionally, it was really, really hard. And it's something that I definitely don't want to go through again.
Yeah, I think a lot. I know I did at times. I think a lot of people felt quite powerless. I felt as if at times I was, thinking, okay, I can fix this, and then I was trying to pull 2 or 3 levers to do that, and those things would usually fix it for me, and then they couldn't, or they didn't. And the kind of the sense of helplessness at times was really quite difficult to deal with. Yeah, sorry, on you go.
No, I was going to say one of the things that really helped me was a strategy I call it's control and can't control. So sitting down with a piece of paper and you draw a line down the middle, and you have two columns. One column you write control at the top and then can't control on the other side. And you literally just list all the things that you actually have control of. So you can control what time you wake up within a roundabout reason, unless you got a dog that barks at 4 a.m. You can, I mean, you can still choose to stay in bed, you can control, when you have your food, you can control what you eat, you can control what clothes you wear, you can control if you decide to have a shower or not, those little bits. But then write down a list of things that you have no control over. Like we have no control over the weather. We have no control over what the government's going to say. We have no control over what's going to be said on the news. And sometimes just writing that list of things down, that right then and there, what you can't control, can be quite cathartic. And it just puts into realization of, okay, sometimes the things we overstress and have anxiety and over focus on are actually things that we can't control. So I tend to rip that down the middle, look at that piece of can't control and all those words, and then just roll it up into a ball and actually put it into the bin. So for me, I'm physically getting rid of those aspects that I can't control. So I can put all of my focus in on, okay, well, I can't control those things. Let's focus on the bits that I know that I do have control over. Sometimes it could be, I'm going to go grab a shower because I just want to refresh. I'm going to go out for that walk. I'm going to make myself a smoothie, or, those little bits that you have control of. And over time, that I feel helps just realign the sort of, if you're feeling overwhelmed or stressed or anxious, it just kind of takes you away from that a little bit more. And just, again, gives you that control back, which sometimes I think we feel a bit more happy with when we're in control of what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like it's just a way of taking those thoughts and worries and whatever's in your mind and putting it into a place that, it just puts it in a place where you can see it and visualize it. And it's not there as background noise in a sense. And then you're able to put it aside and do what you can.
Yeah, very much so.
So, what are some, there's a huge story here. Someone who's been to three Olympic Games, Commonwealth Games as well. What are some of the biggest challenges you face, and what are some of the biggest accomplishments as well?
That's actually a really good question. So I guess some of the biggest challenges I've had have been like dealing with pressure, dealing with the expectations, and a lot of the expectations actually probably come from myself. I feel like, I've got the pressure of the nation behind me. I've got the pressure of my coach, expecting me to do things, and my family. But actually, a lot of those perceptions are just myself. Like, I want to do well. You put so much hard work and effort into it. It's only natural for you to feel the pressure because you want to do well. You want to succeed in what you do because that's why you put that hard work and effort into it. And sometimes, I can manage it really well, and I've been able to come away feeling like, yep, I've achieved this. And then there's other times where it can really get to you. It can really overwhelm you at some points, and it gets to the point where you can kind of feel like a failure. It is not a nice place to be in. So that's one of my biggest challenges, has been sort of overcoming different types of pressure. I guess my first real exposure to it was possibly making the Olympic team for the first time in 2008, because the Olympic Games, it's once every 4 years. It's the pinnacle of pretty much every sport. But it wasn't until 2012, because it was home games. There are very few athletes that ever get to experience competing on home soil at a home Olympic Games. And walking out from my final of the 400 IM, like, there was no point having headphones in, because you wear headphones, get yourself in the zone for the music, because the crowd was just so loud, so noisy. And you can feel a little bit overwhelmed because you suddenly realize there's a lot of people wanting me to do well. Or you can rise to the occasion and think, you know what, let's do this. I've got that support. And the experience I had in 2012 really helped me in 2014. And for that, I'll always be grateful for, because, like my last 50 meters in 2014 of my 400 IM race, like, I heard the crowd so loudly. Like, to hear any noise when you're underwater, like, you live in your own head, as I mentioned before. So to hear the crowd on that last 50 was just so cool. And you know what, I used that to lift me up. And yeah, I wouldn't have been able to have done that had I not overcome some of the other pressures that I've had in my career. So yeah, learning to use that as actually a help rather than a hindrance was really important. Some of the other hurdles, I guess, have been injuries. I'm currently going through, rehab at the minute with a current injury, and you get little niggles. And I've had stupid mistakes, like I've dropped a weight on my finger, crushed it, and burst it open. I've dropped a weight on my chest. I'm obviously not very. I need to be monitored when I'm in a gym because I seem to be dropping weights left, right, and center. Um, but then my mindset is, okay, right, well, my fingers all stitched up, I can't use it, but I've got three other limbs working, right? Let's try and find ways to use these other three limbs. I had surgery in my ankle in 2018, and I thought, right, okay, so I can't get in the water because I've got stitches, but I can get my upper body in the water. So I was walking on poolside with my moon boot on, and I literally had like a crop top on, knelt on poolside, and just dunked my upper body in the water and just sculled the water. So I had no idea whether that was the right thing to do or not, but for me in my head, it kind of kept me, it kept me going, kept me sane. So whenever I'm faced with a hurdle, I do try and find ways. I guess that's my mindset, is I think outside the box. I think, okay, the solution isn't going to be straightforward. I'm going to have to look at other ways to kind of get around it. And I guess some of my successes come from that, because I guess success for me has changed over the years. I used to think success is being on the podium and winning medals. And 2016, the Olympic Games in Rio was possibly one of my biggest life lessons ever. Missing an Olympic medal by 1500ths of a second. If you ever sit with a stopwatch and try and start and stop it for 1500ths, it's very small. There are athletes who have lost out to medals in even shorter time to that. But for me, that felt like that was my last opportunity at trying to get an Olympic medal. And by not getting it, I felt, well, what's the point? Why do I keep pushing myself through this? Why do I want to be an athlete? The whole point is to win medals, to feel my self-worth was more. I genuinely felt that my self-worth depended solely on this Olympic medal to prove that I was worthy enough to be up against the best in the world. And it was one of the biggest struggles that I went through, but actually one of the best life lessons, because I've come to terms with, well, what actually does success mean? It's more than just the medals. For me, it's the ability to still get up at 4:30 in the mornings to go training, to be in the water and actually enjoy the moments. Misty Hyman being there, working hard and just living the moment. Success for me is being happy and content in what I do, not feeling the pressure from everybody else, and actually the process towards the outcome. So I have, again, another thing to write down in the can't control section is I have no control over the outcome. As much as I'd love to think I have control over an outcome, I don't. So for me, the only bit I have control is the process to get there, like how I, turn up to training each day, the different goals that I set that aren't number related, but actually more physically related. And I've actually been able to enjoy swimming and training a lot more now, and it's helped me so much going through my injury just now. And even the Commonwealth game win in 2014, I've learned that yes, being on the podium and winning it was just incredible. But the year leading into it was actually one of the hardest years ever. I was getting my butt kicked every time I raced. I had a lot of self-doubt. I was really struggling with motivation, and I felt I was training the hardest I'd ever trained, but it never came to fruition whenever I raced. And being on the podium was great, but I realized that actually it meant more because I overcame my self-doubt. I overcame my fears of failure, and I overcame the expectation as well that I kind of put a lot on myself. So yes, apologies. That's a very mishmash answer to your question, but it's still going. Like my journey's still going, and I'm sure there'll be many highs and lows to add to the list.
Definitely.
And here for hours talking about them, but yeah.
Definitely. So there's definitely a recurring theme of, for a lack of a better way of putting it, mindset, and then just the point of view of how you view. So, for example, how you view pressure. Is that something that will affect you in a negative way, or do you actually maybe perhaps not even term it as pressure? You just are excited by the almost the intensity of the moment. And then you talked a lot about the enjoyment and the process rather than the outcome as well. Like can you think back? What were the things what were the penny drop moments for that? What were the things that really flipped the switch and incited that change?
It was when I was sitting on the sofa in 2018, literally the day after that I had the surgery done on my ankle, because I'd reached a point where I was just fed up. I wasn't happy with how I was swimming. I actually had even told my coach, you know what, I don't think I can go on to Tokyo. I cannot do this. I'm just burnt out. I am done. I just don't seem to be meeting the expectations. I was still struggling to talk about Rio. And I thought, right, well, having, a couple of weeks break from whilst my foot recovers, it's going to be a good thing. I'm going to need that time away. I think I lasted about 24 hours before I realized how much I actually missed the water and actually missed training. And then I kind of saw it as a puzzle, being like, right, well, how am I going to stay fit? Let's think of other ways to keep my cardiovascular working. Okay, so I can't run because obviously it requires my ankles loading and all that, and I can't be standing up or on my feet. I can't spin. I can't row. Okay, it's not leaving me very much option for cardiovascular output. So then I realized the skiing erg machine. I don't know if you've seen it. It's like a rowing machine, but vertical.
Yeah.
I thought, right, well, if I get one box, put it in front of that, grab the handle, sit down on the box, and then I just did skiing, like the vertical skiing. And I was getting some really good heart rate spikes and I loved it. And for me, it felt like, this is an actual puzzle. And then getting back in the water and training again, listening to my body. I had my first competition and I kind of also immediately went back into that anxiety of, what if I don't do well? What if people laugh at me because I'm going really slow? And I suddenly thought, right, well, what two things can I do well within this race without looking at the time? Well, I've been working on fly kick off the wall because I need my ankle to move. And I want to make sure that I finish really strong, because missing a medal by 1500ths of a second, I need to nail those finishes. So those are the two things I had in my head. So I executed the swim. And as soon as I touched the wall, the one habit that a lot of athletes do as soon as you finish is scoreboard, like where the scoreboard is. Look, where did you place and what was your time? So I gave myself about a 5-second delay where I thought, right, did I achieve goal one? Did I do fly kicks off the wall? Yeah, I did. Although there was 150 where I didn't. So, okay, kind of met that goal. Did I breathe in the last 10 meters, finish strong? Yeah, I can safely say that I did that. Then I would turn my attention to the scoreboard. And it took me a little while to realize it gave me a completely different perspective of my time. If I'd looked at that time to start with, I would have been like, oh, that's really slow. That's so slow. I'm like, put 30 seconds on my PB. That's terrible. But because I'd made those goals and I achieved it, I thought, well, that time, okay, so those goals gave me that time. What can I do now to step up and move on? And I started really enjoying it. I started, instead of immediately looking for that gratification of what time did I go, I started realizing how important it was. Well, how did I swim it? Did I swim it to the best of my ability and work on the little details? And as the year went on, my times were dropping and I didn't have to think or worry about my times. They actually started naturally getting quicker. And it meant that I was constantly thinking and evolving how I race and how I basically achieved the race, the outcome. So yeah, that for me, that was possibly my biggest sort of aha moment. And it wasn't until I got to the British Championships where everyone was qualifying for the world champs. We'd made the call that I wasn't going to aim for it. I knew that I wasn't going to be ready for it. So I went into the meet for the first time in 15 years where I had no pressure or expectation to make a team. And I loved it. I actually was I had such a big grin, and it was almost like you're going in with the rose, colored glasses on, and they were just taken off. And suddenly I was looking at my swimming and the sport from a completely different perspective. And I think they actually have a video. I don't know whether I'll be able to find it, but they have a video of me finishing my heat swim. And everyone's looking at the scoreboard and I'm looking at the timing pad and I'm like tapping the wall with my thumb going, right, goal one, did I achieve that? Goal two, did I achieve that? And the cameraman's on top of me and you can see me talking to myself. It looks really strange, but it helped me get through it. And I swam a lot better than I think I anticipated. So Yeah, so basically having surgery on my ankle was possibly one of the biggest turning points for me. And it was working at it each day. Like it was that constant, it wasn't going to be just this one big aha moment. It was the continuation of sticking with it and, making that change and actually realizing and looking at it from a broader perspective. The outcome was more than just the medals, the personal best times. The outcome was more than that. It was how to achieve it that I realized was just as important. And yeah, and as I say, it's allowed me to actually enjoy my sport a lot more and given me that deep perspective. And I can take that actually not just into swimming, but into life out with swimming. Because at some point, I am going to have to hang up my goggles and, I'm not going to get gold medals for getting around the supermarket the fastest. I'm going to have to find different ways to kind of get that self gratification. And for me, I realized that, those processes, goal setting, finding your purpose, they all actually are important for me for life after sport as well.
Yeah. Just a question I want to ask about the motivation piece as well. Like, are you quite a strong visualizer of what you want?
Yes and no. Yes, once I know what I want, I can
Uh-huh.
visualize it. But I don't know whether it's just me being female. Sometimes it takes me a wee while to find it. I can have it's like a big box of like scattered. It's like, oh, I want this, but then there's that, and then oh, actually, no, there's over there. Yeah. It takes me a little while to like narrow it down. And once I narrow it down, I can then focus in on it. But sometimes it's just focusing on the smaller stuff first that's actually really important. I mean, there's something really simple. In training the other day, we were doing a drill where we had to swim and hold one leg out of the water. So swimming freestyle, but with one leg literally upright behind you. It's a little bit hard to visualize, but yeah, it's almost like a little submarine kind of thing. And then my coach said, right, who can balance a float on your foot for like 25 meters and then flick it up and see if you can catch it in your hand? Everyone's like, what's this got to do with swimming? And of course, we tried it and it just kept falling off, falling off. And everybody gave up, but I didn't realize it. I was so determined to try and achieve this that I thought, right, well, the float doesn't work. Can I put a pool boy on my foot? No, pool boy doesn't work. Can I put a hand paddle? The hand paddle stays on. Okay, right. How do I, right, I'm not going to move my hips. I'm going to keep my hips. And I just, those little bits, like, and it was something so small and so, um, not inconvenient. It just seemed, really simple. Balance something in your foot for a set length of time and then flick it up. And I was the only one that actually just kept working at it. I failed and I failed and I failed. But I was like, okay, that didn't work. How do I make it better? Right, try that. Oh, that kind of worked, but not quite. Right. How do I adjust it to then? So I kept using the experience of not quite making it each time to learn from it, to then set myself up for the next time. And then eventually I got it. Took me so many attempts, but I actually got it in the end. And for me, that was down to my mindset, my sort of inability to like let go of it and to actually still stick with it, regardless of whether I was succeeding or not. I had that goal. I was going to work towards that goal. I failed to get towards the goal, but in that failure, I learned, well, what worked, what didn't work. That worked, that didn't work. Okay, that didn't work. How do I make it work? Try this. Did that work? Yep. Did that work? Nope. Right. Try something else. So I just kept myself moving forwards. And it wasn't until my dad actually mentioned it to me that I realized actually, yeah, that's kind of like how my mindset works, I guess. I kind of take and see things in like opportunistic ways. And yeah, and there's always something to learn from it. I don't think I answered your question. I think I've just gone off on a tangent. I'm really sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. I
Yeah.
guess like something I wanted to come back to was, and I think I think a lot of people struggle with this, and I definitely resonate with it. Where so the idea of identity and what you do
Mhm.
being a massive part of your identity, and for me, what I've done in the last 10 years with Trtl as a brand and going on that journey to start a business, create a product, create a brand, reach customers, build community. That has been my life, and therefore when something happened like the pandemic where it has a massive impact on it that's completely out with my control, then that is quite a difficult thing to reconcile. And one of the things that the pandemic's taught me is it's definitely been a lesson in resilience, but it's also just put things into perspective and done so in a way where it's the what I do is no longer, it's less of what defines me, and because of that I enjoy it more, and I actually think I'm better at it because of that. That's my experience of it. I guess what's your experience of making that switch or shift?
Yeah, I think lockdown again has kind of been my biggest identifier, because I was a swimmer and the thought of retiring did scare me, because I thought, well, I just want to swim forever. Ultimately, I just want to avoid going into the real world and pay tax and mortgages and and all that jazz. I'm actually having to try and figure all that out. And I really wish that I had sort of sat down and looked at that a little bit more, because I would certainly be in a much better position of trying to get a mortgage, because trying to get one right now is just a bit of a nightmare. um, so yeah, as I mentioned, after Rio, I just thought my self-worth was, well, I'm only as good as the medals that I've won. Can I describe myself? I mean, at the start you mentioned I'm a triple Olympian and double Commonwealth champion, and could I describe myself without using accolades? Was I able to? And I actually used that as a challenge. I thought, well, I'm always renowned for being a swimmer, but can I actually describe myself without swimming? And I came up with a phrase that I thought described me pretty well. I am a full-time body movement enthusiast and a part-time puppy trainer. And for me, that kind of sums up everything that I enjoy and do. I love knowing how the body moves. I worked
awesome.
on becoming a Pilates teacher. I love working with Poppy. I am clueless when it comes to mortgages and all that, but I'm learning. So, there's more to me than just my swimming. And lockdown allowed me to help that, because I thought, there's a lot of swimmers out there who don't have the experiences that I have. The last 3 Olympic Games, last 4 Commonwealth Games, the highs, the lows. So I put myself forward to actually start speaking to clubs and to individuals to see if there's anything that, I can help with. And initially I thought, 10 free sessions, you might get a couple of people wanting info. And I think I got like 50 emails, and I thought, okay, this is, I'm a little bit more, I guess, oblivious to the help and input that I could sort of, execute with. And that in itself, talking to people and actually having questions that they ask, it constantly gets me thinking and realizing, what, there's more to me than just swimming. And I can be quite fluid with what I want to do and what I want to achieve and where I want to take it. And, it doesn't have to be stuck in this sport box. I can take it into public speaking. I can take it into other areas that I'm interested, like female health or working with dogs, puppy training and stuff like that. So, it's actually being brave and actually being okay with sometimes being a little bit vulnerable and put my hand up and saying, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I need a little bit of a help or a hand. Talk to people and actually find that sort of self-confidence. And one of the talks I actually did with a club was about self-confidence. And there are 3 levels of confidence. You've got your low self-confidence, optimal, and overconfident. And low self-confidence are individuals who are quite happy staying in their comfort zone. They're not willing to, step away from it and not challenge themselves, but they're more likely to just keep doing the same thing and sticking with it. They fear failure, so they're not willing to put themselves forward in case they don't get it right or make a mistake. And sometimes their decisions are based upon the opinions of others. They're more willing to listen to other opinions and make choices based on that rather than actually what do they want from it. And I realized I could actually tick off a lot of those things that I was terrified of failing. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I struggled with Rio, because I felt I had failed and I hated it. I would live in my bubble. My comfort bubble is my routine. I know exactly where things are, and I'm not willing to change or, shake things up a little bit. And yeah, I'm always aware of what people are saying, and I do feel sometimes it affects the choices that I make. Overconfidence, not necessarily the most attractive trait, but it's about being so self-assured that you're not willing to look at another perspective. That they're not going to swim well. Making past judgment on other people without actually knowing what's going to happen. And ultimately, I love the phrase for the optimal self-confidence. Confidence isn't I will swim fast or I will achieve this or I will do that. Self-confidence is I will be fine whether I achieve it or I don't. So for me, in swimming terms, it's I will be fine whether I swim fast or not. And that really resonated with me on quite a lot of levels, because I thought, you know what, ultimately, whatever happens, I will be fine, whether things go well or things don't go well. And yeah, and just kind of going from there, it's I've kind of lost my train of thought, but for me, that was kind of like my most important sort of message to myself, in sort of, dealing with what's been thrown at us with lockdown, and actually realizing that I'm more than just a swimmer. I can turn that phrase into whatever phrase. It doesn't have to be I will, whether I swim fast or not. It can be whether I do a presentation and it goes down well or not. Ultimately, I will be fine at the end of this talk, or at the end of this presentation, or my Pilates class, whatever it is. And it's being confident in knowing that you will be fine.
Yeah. And then how have you, so I think this is interesting, how have you, through that, redefined what success is?
Yeah, I think it's aligning what's important to me. And definitely during pandemic, my family and health has been a huge thing that's been really important. And I guess a little bit of self-trust and self-happiness. So, I used to think I had to swim in order to make myself happy. And I realized that there are actually a lot of other things that make me happy. And they're small little things. Like Poppy, at the minute, we taught her she can't come up on the sofa unless we have a set blanket. Now we've got a box that we put the blanket in, we take it out and all that. She now actively goes and gets the blanket herself when she wants up. And just seeing her try to get this blanket out the box just makes me laugh. And it just makes me so happy, because I suddenly feel like, oh, we've taught her this little boundary and she understands. And, you kind of have that sort of special bond. So, she will always make me happy. And helping others as well. Like, I've really enjoyed working with a lot of young athletes. I've worked with a couple of people in business as well on certain talks that I've done. And knowing that, at least one person goes away with something that they've resonated with what I've said, for me, that makes me happy as well. So my success has certainly become a lot more broad spectrum than just, I need that medal, I need that first place, second place, third place ribbon. I need some materialistic item to define that moment. I've realized that those moments are defined purely on my emotion. Like, if I'm happy with it, that's success. If I feel like I've achieved my goal, then that's my success. Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. As long as I'm fine, that's success.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. To go off on a slight tangent before we get back to the main conversation, what trick? There was a trick you told me that you taught Poppy.
Oh, I've taught her a couple. She can pack my swimming bag. She can
I love that.
go and
I love that.
She gets a blanket. I mean, the blanket's more of a duvet. Like, she will literally, and it's funny because I put a couple of other duvets in there, but it's just one duvet that she'll get. It's the same one each time. She'll literally pull it out the box. She'll tidy up her toys. So I've got a box, and toys are scattered around, and I'll say, right, tidy, and she'll put them into her box. And then that's when I suddenly thought, if I put my swimming bag down, open it up, and actually scatter my swimming stuff, can she pack my bag? And she can. But as soon as she gets a snorkel, though, she thinks it's a stick and she'll run off with it. But yeah, I've really enjoyed working with her, the different tricks and stuff. And I'm hopeful that we can work on some scent training, because being a spaniel, oh my goodness, her sense of smell is very good. Like, we don't need a Hoover or a Roomba or wherever it is, because she's self-activating. She will clear the floor up pretty quickly. But yeah, I'm always looking for trying to work with different things. And even like, just teaching her has taught me a lot about communication, because she has no idea what I'm saying. I can like say a whole sentence and you can tell it's like, I don't know what you're saying. But if I say it in like a normal tone like this, she's like, okay, Hannah's content. But if I suddenly go like change my intonation, she's like, oh, what have I done? What have I done? Or if I'm really happy and excited, she's like, oh, what are we going to do next? So I realize the power of communication is more than just the words that you say. It's your body language. It's your tone of voice. So she's taught me an awful lot on communicating, and especially when we're not speaking to people face to face, we're behind a screen. that's going to be so important when we do get back into sort of the social groups, and actually, learning the power of interaction. So yeah, Poppy's taught me an awful lot on that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then I guess it's now March 2021. Can't quite believe it.
Yeah.
What are your plans going forward then?
So at the minute, I've been creating a couple of workshops for female health. I've really enjoyed learning a lot about it. I didn't realize actually how much I didn't know about female health. It wasn't until I spoke to Georgie Brunevals from Fitter Women in March that I realized at the age of 30, I thought I knew my menstrual cycle. And no, I didn't know it at all. And I suddenly realized actually how many individuals do know, and not just in sport, but also in business as well. So I've really enjoyed putting together a lot of the research that I've done, working with Fitter Women. I've become an ambassador for them. So I actively go and speak to a lot of clubs, hopefully a couple more sort of top level businesses. And it's not just for females, like it's open to males and individuals who want to learn, because I do feel that knowledge is power. So working on creating in-person workshops so that hopefully once all this is finished, we can actually do face-to-face work, because I think there's a lot of cool examples and tasks that hopefully can make it more than just death by PowerPoint sort of thing. I've really enjoyed as well doing talks, so kind of building up, I guess, looking back, that self-reflection on my story, the little bits that I can pick out on that can hopefully resonate with people, whether it's through motivation, Olympic mindset, goal setting.
There are so many. Sorry to interrupt. There are so many insights. There are so many insights. You're very good at that self-reflection and understanding. It was that thing that's made the change or whatever it was. You're very good at picking out the specific things and rearranging the puzzle to just make it better align with what's better for you. Definitely, 100%.
I definitely don't figure it out right away. It takes me a little while, but once I do figure it out, it's like a little light bulb moment, which is kind of cool. So kind of creating some talks and again some workshops on that. I became a qualified Pilates teacher as well. Again, my body movement enthusiasm, being able to work with individuals. It's not just about lifting heavy weights. I'm not a big athlete, so for me, Pilates was a huge, I guess, for that mental well-being, but also just that body control, having that good posture so that, if we're sat at a desk all day, you get aches and sort of pains, and, just helps keep your body, whether you're 9 years old or 90 years old. Pilates is for all, and I really enjoy it because it challenges the body with very little equipment, which is quite cool because you can take it anywhere with you. So just kind of working on those little bits. So hopefully, creating a business of sorts that captures my story and puts it into sort of some use. So hopefully people can have tips and tools. Hopefully providing a service for female health, not just in sport, but in business as well. And then hopefully, train up maybe up and coming athletes to then be able to present it themselves. And then continuing to hopefully own as many spaniels and train them up to, do lots of exciting things. There's quite a few bits that I've got on the horizon, which is quite nice. And then ultimately, I've got the Olympic trials coming up in April. So, do my best at that and see if I can make my 4th Olympic Games. If I can, then that'll be amazing. If not, then at least I've given myself the opportunity to try, considering how much of a roller coaster year it's been with both the pandemic and my shoulder surgery. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting things to come.
Yeah, and a lot of things to take forward as well.
Yeah.
So, final question then: where is the first place you're going to travel to when the world opens up again?
Okay, so when the world opens up, I'd love to travel in around Europe. Italy for me is probably one of my favorite countries because, pizza and ice cream. For me, just athlete, always thinking of the food. I just love the climate. I love the food. And, it's easy to get to on a flight. Obviously with the EU stuff, I don't quite know how easy it is going to be. But for me, if I was to think internationally, I would certainly head for Italy. In sort of nationally, I would actually just, try the NC 500. I'd love to tour around the whole of Scotland, and, take Poppy with me as well. Because, an adventure with Poppy and Ewan for me would be like the perfect holiday. So those are I'm cheating slightly. Those are kind of like my two sort of destinations: exploring the sort of coastal route in Scotland and making my way to Italy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Hannah. This has been amazing. Lots of insights, some great stories. Like for me, like visualizing and I guess put myself in the position of being underwater and hearing the crowd cheering you on at the Commonwealth Games must be amazing. To hear that underwater must just be incredible. And lots of great insights and stories, and I think a lot of things to look forward to in the future.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you for being on. Cool. Well, thank you for watching, everyone. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and hit that bell. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please follow and subscribe as well. We have lots more content like this coming up, so please tune in. Let us know what you think. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and we'll speak to you soon. Take care.